Hey everyone, so we're continuing on with our production breakdown of the song Cauterized by Julia Goff. And if you watched the last video, we broke down the drum mix. So if you haven't watched that yet, please go ahead and check that video out. I'll have it linked below. In this video, we're going to break down the bass. So let me show you what the bass sounds like with no processing. And now with all of the processing. So you'll notice that there's not a huge difference between the beginning sound and the ending one, and that's actually good. We want to get as close as we can with the raw track to the final desired sound, and that's what we really shot for here, and I think we nailed it. So as far as the equipment goes, this was tracked with a Music Man bass that my friend Blake owns. It's a great sounding instrument, and we just went DI into my Little Labs Red Eye DI box, and we're actually not using any other tracks for this one. A lot of times I'll have a DI and then like a dirt track or something like that where I go through a SansAmp pedal, and we're not doing that here because we kind of got everything that we needed with just this raw DI sound. So let's go ahead and go through the first step in the chain. This is the distressor from Universal Audio, and I'm really hitting this pretty hard to level out the performance, doing anywhere from like 10 to 12 dB of compression here at a 3-to-1 ratio, fast attack, fast release. So let's hear it without it. Now with it. So as you can tell, we're hitting that pretty hard to try to really squash the dynamics of the bass and get a really level performance. So then we're going to hit it with low control, and what this is it's a multi-band compressor that's compressing the low end based on this frequency that you choose here. So everything below this frequency. On this particular track, we have it set at 200 to compress the low and low mids to give this bass a little bit more power. And so we're compressing, trying to get right around this like 6 dB of compression mark. And again, remember this is just additional compression for the low end. And then we're boosting that back in so that we have a more consistent low end being boosted in the mix. So we are also using just a tiny bit of the low end saturation that's available in this tool as well at the 80 hertz mark. So starting at 80 hertz and up, it's going to start adding in some saturation to help the low end poke through in smaller speakers. So without low control, and with it. So because we're reducing and boosting around the same amount, you shouldn't notice a massive change in volume in the low end necessarily, but it is going to be more consistent. Then we are coming in with SSL channel, my favorite plugin, and we're doing all of our kind of main sound design EQ moves. So we are cutting out everything below 30 hertz, cutting out everything above 4K to focus in on the frequencies that we really want the bass to be living in. And we are boosting at 2K to get a little bit of mid-range string kind of sound, and then also cutting out a little bit of the boxiness in the 800 range. So then we're also boosting at 80 hertz for some sub-low end, so we can start getting that kind of beefy, rounded bass sound that really fills in the low end of the mix. So let's go without SSL and with it. So should just clean it up a little bit before we hit some saturation. And if you saw the previous video, you know this is another one that I've used quite a bit. It is Black Salt Audio's Escalator. And this does something really nice to the low mids, using it a bit more aggressively than I did on the drums, because this like 20 to 35, 40 range is just a really nice spot for bass. It kind of fills in that low end. It's going to help it cut through on smaller speakers. And yeah, I like what it does. So let's hear without it and with it. So just like with the drums, the saturation moves are pretty subtle, but again, they stack on top of each other to really help the mix cut through in different listening environments. So then we compress the low end, and now what we want to do, now that we have our kind of our basic balance down, we want to compress the overall sound and really pin it down. So we're using the CLA 76, which is the black 1176 compressor, just to give us more level control on the performance and really pin this bass sound down. So without it and with it. Also doing a medium attack fast release on this one, and this is really starting to get us to that point where we have a very consistent low end in the track. There's a lot of room for the mid-range and for the high end to be very dynamic, but generally speaking, the low end, we want it to be nice and tight and kind of compacted so that we get a consistent power in the low end of the track. Then we just have some very subtle EQ moves that were probably made kind of at the end of the process here, where we wanted to boost a little bit of this 150 and equally cut the 250 range. So the 250 range is going to cut out just a tiny bit of mud. The 150 range is going to be a nice, powerful place for the bass. So these are going to be very small moves that I made near the end of the mix. And yeah, let's hear it. So without it and with it. And we're kind of left with this very dark bass sound that I think fits the track very well and really gives us this nice round low end. And then finally, we're using a limiter to just pin that bass sound even more and give us kind of maximum dynamic control here. So let's hear it without it. And with it. So as you can tell, it's barely doing anything. We're just really wanting to catch the peaks there so that we can pin that volume in the mix. And that's really all that we're doing to the bass in this track, aside from our volume automation, which I can cover automation in another video. So that's it for the processing on the bass. This is not necessarily the sound that I go for on every track. A lot of times I'll add more mid-range or more clankiness if we're going for something a little bit heavier. But the reality is I think that this kind of dark, round low end for this particular track works really well. Let's hear a final A-B. So here is the bass with no processing in the final mix. And here is the bass processing engaged. If you have any questions regarding bass processing, mixing in general, or if you have any interest in working together, go ahead and just put that in the comments or send me a private message or check out joshnewmanmusicproductions.com. And if you like this kind of content, please subscribe so that you can stay up to date with what I've got going on. Thanks.